tonight. McKnight tonight.
Wrong again.
McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight.
I've seen that since university.
Funny, insightful interviews. Put my watch to picture some McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. Here comes McKnight tonight.
Hello and welcome to this Monday edition of McKnight Tonight. It is the 21st of July and it has been a day of celebration here in the McKnight household with my middle daughter turning 15. So it is a very big happy birthday to Eloise. We have had party pie, sausage rolls, a sushi birthday cake, and we actually went and did one of those escape rooms down at Surfers Paradise. I've got to say, it was a lot of fun. The family worked very well together. But something did happen today while we were out and about that has become the topic of tonight's Rob's Rant. So watch out for that one. That'll happen in a little while. Meanwhile, your support on our YouTube page, guess what? It's working. Look, it's early days yet, but we're seeing some very positive signs in terms of starting to monetize. So thank you so much for your loyalty as we head into week 2 of our 4 nights a week show. Make sure you go to youtube.com/@McKnight Tonight. That's youtube.com/@McKnight Tonight. And as a special thank you to the people who have taken out memberships, guess what? I'm going to give you early access to Media McKnight every Tuesday. So that means as soon as I finish it, you will get it uploaded straight away before the play at 9 p.m. So whenever it's finished, there it is just for you before the public feed. And also one more thank you, Radio Notes. You have done more than buy a coffee, my friend. You have really supported the McKnight family at buymeacoffee.com/@McKnight Tonight. And we're very grateful for your contribution. All right, enough of all that. Let's get into our hot topics. And we turn, in fact, to the Tasmanian state election from the weekend. And guess what? We still don't have a winner. Labor, which had its worst result ever, has ruled out doing a deal with the Greens to form government. It looks like it's going to be a while before we get a result there. And Labor are now talking about trying to form government with independents and the like. This is very, very messy. So while we wait to see what happens there, I wanted to raise an issue that was part of the Greens election campaign in Tasmania. I'm talking about pill testing. The party has been floating a bill for mobile pill testing at events and fixed site services to keep festival goers safe. Now, before this snap election was called, the Liberal government refused to support the idea and hit out at Labor for not declaring its position. But don't forget, this is something we've seen before. Back in 2018, New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian rejected pill testing, ignoring recommendations of an inquest into drug deaths at music festivals. Instead, she brought in so-called amnesty bins outside venues as the safer alternative. The bins were meant to serve as a way for festival goers to dispose of their illegal pills before they enter the venue. There's no evidence I can find to suggest this measure worked. Shock, horror. But when pill testing is introduced, things start to change. When the ACT government ran its Groove in the Moo trial in 2019, all 7 patrons who discovered their pills contained bad drugs or bad chemicals resulted in them discarding them in an amnesty bin. So yes, bins work when paired with information. Alone, I think they're really just symbolic. Now, critics say there's plenty of potential in pill testing and zero evidence you ever save lives with unaccompanied bins. And I agreed with that. I agree with that. I don't know why we can't just grow up and accept the fact that pill testing works. Now, a little later on, I'm going to bring in someone who was behind that pill testing at the Canberra Festival to find out what they learnt and what they saw. Because I really think it's really easy to say zero tolerance on drugs. Yeah, okay, but we live in the real world. People take drugs. So if we're going to accept that people take drugs, and I know some politicians don't, even though a lot of them use it, that's the other thing that gets me. Politicians, for all their, we're trying to do the right thing, you know, we believe in a moral society. You know that they're partying, you know that they're taking drugs. And as we know from Mark Latham, which I'm going to get to in a moment, we know that they're allegedly or we're hearing that they're having sex in Parliament, a claim he hasn't denied. And yet they want to be our moral compass. We've just got to forget this BS when it comes to a war on drugs, okay? And be realistic about what's happening there. I would rather save 7 lives like that happened at that Canberra festival. They've tested the pills. They've said, hang on, these contain some really bad chemicals. We don't think it's safe. They have disposed of them. When Gladys Berejiklian said, we're just going to put bins out, how many pills do you think were thrown in there? You'd be lucky if it was one, a handful at most. There is no way festival goers went, oh, there's some bins there for me to throw away these pills I just paid hundreds of dollars for. Of course they didn't. The only way they're going to throw those pills out is if they're going to have a lot of trouble and some side effects and possibly death. No, we really need to rethink our stance here. Prohibition, it's easy to talk about, but at the end of the day, you've got to understand the realities of what works. Stay tuned. I'll get to that interview shortly and your feedback as well. You are watching McKnight Tonight. Well, I just mentioned him. It is the saga that just seems to go from worse to worse. It looks like even Mark Latham can't talk his way out of this one. Now, you remember the outrage after the Daily Telegraph revealed he'd been sending inappropriate messages from the floor of Parliament. And it wasn't just the content, which ranged from grubby to downright disturbing, but it was also the fact it was happening while he was supposed to be working for the people of New South Wales. So far, it's been alleged he hired escorts, wanted to be called master, defecated on his partner before sex, and he wouldn't deny he had sex at Parliament House. Now, he has admitted sending sexually explicit messages while on the floor of Parliament, and if all this was consensual, then most of that is between him and his partner at the time. Except, of course, anything that happened in Parliament, a place of work. But here's something I really didn't like about how he has handled this situation. And it really shows just how much of a bully Mark Latham is. Take a look at this clip.
You said you don't have a video from Miss Matthews.
No, not that again.
Does a video exist?
You've got to change your mindset onto something that matters, something that actually matters to the people of New South Wales. A big thing called, I don't know what you do at the Australian, but it's called public policy and public interest, not someone's sex life. And you're shaking there. You must be worried.
Yeah, because I've been holding the camera for 30 minutes.
Oh, shaky fake media. Fake news media.
It would be a sackable offence, though, in the private sector or anywhere else.
Sorry?
Though. It would be a sackable offence, in a course.
Well, it's not in the New South Wales Parliament, okay? And we're not going in. I don't know what you people do at night. I don't care. I don't know what you do to entertain yourself, but we're not going into this terrain. The poor old shaky here, so voyeuristic, is lathering up to try and get some information. It's ridiculous. It's appalling. And you ultimately may be responsible for something here in the Department of Reckless and Irresponsible Journalism that, quite frankly, I regard as horrific.
What did I say earlier about politicians trying to look moralistic when they are the worst in our society at times? That was nothing but bullying. But let's break it down. I'm going to break down that clip to see the tactics being used by Latham here. Let's start with the question from the reporter.
You said you don't have a video from Miss Matthews.
No, not that again.
Does a video exist?
You've got to change your mindset onto something that matters, something that actually matters to the people of New South Wales. A big thing called, I don't know what you do at the Australian, but it's called public policy and public interest, not someone's sex life.
Straight away, he has decided he doesn't want to talk about this issue, which is fine for him, but he doesn't get to determine the media discourse. I mean, he's using a playbook out of Trump there. I don't like that question. You're a bad journalist. He is being a bully to that journalist. It's not a game we generally play here in Australia. But see what he does do to deflect? He starts chastising the journalist about what they should be covering and then make it sound like they're perverted for asking about his sex life, which, let me remind you, apparently took place in Parliament House, which makes it a story of public interest. He may have a point about the consensual relationship that he had with this lady, but his actions beg questions of what took place at Parliament House. while he was representing the people of New South Wales. Whether he likes it or not, this is a valid story. But it's this next part I find particularly disturbing. A person is holding up a camera. So let's assume it's their iPhone. And they probably waited for a bit of a press conference, so they're holding it up. There's no bench, so they're holding it up. And he is trying to turn her shaking to make it accuse her of sexual excitement.
And you're shaking there. You must be worried.
Yeah, because I've been holding the camera for 30 minutes.
Oh, shaky fake media.
Shaky fake media. What does that even mean? The woman has a slight shake, one that can barely be seen on the footage, by the way. And why is the media fake? He, let me remind you, hasn't actually denied any of the reporting. He hasn't denied taking pictures of female MPs in Parliament. He hasn't denied having sex in Parliament. But it gets worse.
It would be a sackable offence, though, in the private sector or anywhere else.
Sorry?
It would be a sackable offence, in a course.
Well, it's not in the New South Wales Parliament, okay? And we're not going in. I don't know what you people do at night. I don't care. I don't know what you do to entertain yourself.
So let's not even talk about the fact that something that would be sackable in the private sector, in a business, is fine in Parliament because he's a politician. But that's a whole other argument. Now he's accusing the media for being perverts, for following up on what is an explosive story in the public interest. See the way he tries to turn it around, making these reporters sound perverted because they get up to all manner of things at night, stuff he doesn't want to know about. I'm sure what they're getting up to isn't anything like the allegations made against him, which is fine if it's all consensual and not at Parliament House. It's just icky the way he says, I don't want to know what you're getting up to at night, like they're the people that have done the wrong thing here. But then he goes further.
I don't know what you people do at night. I don't care. I don't know what you do to entertain yourself, but we're not going into this terrain. The poor old Shaky here, so voyeuristic, is lathering up to try and get some information. It's ridiculous. It's appalling. And you ultimately may be responsible for something here in the Department of Reckless and Irresponsible Journalism that, quite frankly, I regard as horrific.
So is he accusing that journalist of getting so excited? What? Sexually excited or excited for the story? And he's labelled her shaky, a derogative term. I mean, I'm not even going into the fact that she's female. I think this is outrageous against anyone. It is absolutely, what's the word I'm looking for? It is absolutely a reflection of the man himself. The way he's attacking the media. And he's finding it all horrific how it might turn out. What, is he threatening that he's going to do self-harm? And he's now trying to lay that on the media? Well, no, Mark Latham. I hope that doesn't happen. But that would be the consequences of your own actions if you went down that horrible path. Don't try and do that to deflect and get out of something. It's a really pathetic way to try and get yourself off the hook. You had fun. You're skiting to everyone, the greatest sex you ever had. Well, there are things coming out from that relationship that deserve greater scrutiny. And now you need to be a man and own up to it and live with the consequences. Mark Latham talking about the greatest sex he ever had. When I think about the greatest sex I've ever had, just wish someone else had been there. It was a joke, Jasmine. Sorry, you cannot believe the look I just got from Jazzy on the social media. It's time for Rob's rant. And as I mentioned to you earlier, my family did a bit of a trip today and we took public transport down to Surfers Paradise to go and do an escape room. It was Eloise's 15th birthday. And it was all good. We went there, we did it, we enjoyed it, we had fun, we came back. Now, on the tram back, that's when things got interesting. We're sitting there minding our own business. And this funky looking dude sits. We're in the two facing each other, and this other guy gets on the ones just opposite us, next to us. He's sitting there with his mate. And then all of a sudden he starts reaching into his bag. And he pulls out a can of tuna. And I'm thinking, surely not. Surely not. That's obviously for later at home. He pulls out some crackers. And I'm just there looking at him like, no, you cannot be doing this. This cannot be a thing. And my family are looking at me because they can see the McKnight rage forming, the red mist. Sure enough, he opens the tuna and he starts eating it. What kind of moron and self-obsessed idiot do you have to be to think it's okay to eat tuna on public transport? Now, this tram was full of people. What do you think? How can you possibly think that that is okay? That it is okay to have a smelly food item? I think it's bad enough when people eat tuna in the office. I think that should be banned. But even thinking about doing it on public transport? I mean, I do think we should bring back corporal punishment. People should be hung, drung and quartered for daring to open tuna on a public tram/train. How could this guy think it was okay? And yeah, the smell started wafting through, and I'm just like, oh my God, this cannot be real. This cannot be serious. But it was. It was. And I'm still in shock that he dared do it. Do not eat tuna in a public space. Save it for home. It is a smelly item. No one else wants to smell it. I would rather smell your farts. Let's get to your feedback. Jesse, what's coming through? Too much? All right, Shay says, happy Monday. First time tuning in live. Hey, Shay. Good on you for doing that, and thank you for commenting via our YouTube page. Good to have you there, mate. Cheers. Own Your Own Crazy says, McKnight family, when you escape the room, you're supposed to keep running. Or are they supposed to keep running from me? Thank you, Own Your Own Crazy. Travis says, so glad to see you guys are starting to get payoff for all your hard work. I know I've taken out a membership. Yes, you have, Travis. Thank you so much. And you can do that at youtube.com/@McKnightTonight. It all helps. I tell you that if this continues, oh my God, it would just be amazing if we could do this for a living. God, that would be amazing. Travis, you have been a great supporter. Thank you so much. Love your work. Over the page we go. Vicky says, we don't have festivals anymore, so why bother with the pill testing? Good point, Vicky. I suppose that's fair enough. Own Your Own Crazy again. A pill buyback scheme. Can you imagine, like the gun buyback scheme? I'll pay that one. Nicole says, the only one who is appalling is Latham. What a big man he is. Couldn't agree more. He's really shown. I mean, if he wasn't bad enough before this, and you might remember last week, I was sort of giving him the benefit of the doubt because I felt like his private texts had been leaked and I didn't see the need for that and I didn't think it was right. I started to turn over the stuff in Parliament House and the shooting especially the alleged shooting of female parliamentarians on the floor. But the way he treated that journalist is appalling. Just appalling. Over we go again. Shay's back and he says, what drugs is he on? Has he been raiding the pill amnesty bins? I like that, Shay. Justine says, oh, Rob, that's a terrible joke. Yeah, which one? I think I know the one you mean. All right, Dylan says, gotta love that canned tuna smell. Oh, Dylan. Leo's Life Adventures says, some people have no idea, like the guy across the road from us who has left his bins out and the birds are attacking it. Yes, we live in a society, people. We live in a society and we have to play by the rules. think about your fellow human being. Don't eat tuna and don't be a Mark Latham. All right, let me know your feedback. Got a bit fired up there. It's certainly bugging me more as time goes on, and especially the way Mark Latham is handling it. All right, moving on. And a one-liner from comedian Conchetta Caristo has triggered a wave of outrage and condemnation. Here's the comedy routine in question as shown on the news.com.au website.
I love being a girl. I think it's like my favorite hobby. And like, for me, like, I love all the girlies. You don't know me, but if you did, you know I'm obsessed with all the girlies. And like, you know how girls talk to each other when they're drunk on a night out in the toilets? That's me and a Coles at 4 p.m. I'm like, babe, dump him. He seems so toxic. And I can tell because he's standing right next to her. And truly, like, I think I could get along with any girl in the whole world. I even think I could get along with any girl, even in history. Like, put me in a room with Cleopatra. I'd be like, oh my God, I love your eyeliner. Put me in a room with Anne Frank. I'd be like, slut, I have a diary as well. Congrats on the book deal. I would say that.
Cue outrage. The Anti-Defamation Commission chair called it a brutal desecration of the memory of the Holocaust, going on to say in a statement, this wasn't just a joke. It was a brutal desecration of the memory of Anne Frank and the 1.5 million Jewish children who were murdered in the Holocaust, gassed, shot, starved, erased. When someone takes a victim of genocide and turns her into an obscene punchline, they don't just mock her, they violate her. Give me a break. It's comedy. She was actually showing admiration for Anne Frank. And I understand he's obviously upset about the use of the word slut. But I'm going to sound old. Isn't that the way young people her age talk? You know, like they say things to their friends, bitch, get over here. You know, they talk to each other in a whole different way. Sometimes we need to understand the context. And it's interesting because context is important. And I just wonder if he made those comments by seeing the whole clip. Because let me ask you if context does change your opinion of the joke. Have a look at what she said in the lead up to that joke. See if that changes things for you.
I mean, a fun fact about my boyfriend, he's Jewish. Yeah, the crowd goes wild, yeah. He's Jewish and I'm not, which is such a bummer. Because like, if we do actually get married, obviously we're gonna have to have one of those like difficult conversations about whether someone is going to convert to Italian. Did you know this? For him to convert, he has to watch all 3 of the Godfather films and put a little piece of rigatoni where his foreskin used to be. Nice and al dente. But enough about that bozo. What about me? Who am I still? We don't know much about me. I'm a girl. I love being a girl. I think it's like my favorite hobby. And like, for me, like, I love all the girlies. You don't know me, but if you did, you know I'm obsessed with all the girlies. And like, you know how girls talk to each other when they're drunk on a night out in the toilets? That's me and a Coles at 4 p.m. I'm like, babe, dump him. He seems so toxic. And I can tell because he's standing right next to her. And truly, like, I think I could get along with any girl in the whole world. I even think I could get along with any girl, even in history. Like, put me in a room with Cleopatra. I'd be like, oh my God, I love your eyeliner. Put me in a room with Anne Frank. I'd be like, slut, I have a diary as well. Congrats on the book deal. I would say that.
Now, I've played the longer version there so you can see the whole thing. So before she's made that outrageous comment about Anne Frank, she talked about her boyfriend being Jewish. Do you think the chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission had that context? Or did he just see the same clip that was shown on the news.com.au website? Because what I showed you earlier was all that news.com.au showed you. But here's the kicker. That routine is actually from 2024. For some reason, it's making news now. Is it because a journalist saw it and thought, that'd make a good headline? In fact, the clip was uploaded by the Melbourne International Comedy Festival showing her routine from the 2024 Raw Comedy National Grand Final, and it's actually took place at the Melbourne Town Hall on Sunday, 14th of April. Not that you'd know it by that article. 11 months ago. That is a screenshot from today. For 11 months, that clip has not caused outrage. But I noticed that the commissioner, or the chair of the commission, the Anti-Defamation Commission, has uploaded 13 seconds of it. And I bet and I can tell you, it's just that bit where she says, slut. You know, anti-Semitism is a very real thing. We're seeing it around the world. And it's not something that can be tolerated. But when you start having a go at comedians doing what they do, how far do you take it? Not everything is anti-Semitic. Or is it about who it comes from? You know, Jewish people make plenty of anti-Jew jokes. Are they anti-Semitic, or is it just because they're Jewish? She has a Jewish boyfriend. Does that suddenly get her out of jail? I wonder. Okay, more of your feedback in just a moment. And in just a moment, Dr. David Caldecott will join me about that pill testing story I was talking about earlier. He was involved in the very first pill testing trial at a music festival in Australia. So hopefully that'll be one worth watching. All right, Donald Trump has gone to war with Rupert Murdoch. I reckon Trump has just screwed himself big time. Let me explain. So, Trump has filed a $10 billion defamation suit against Rupert Murdoch, the Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones, News Corp, and 2 reporters. Trump claims the Wall Street Journal story falsely linked him to a provocative 2003 birthday card sent to Jeffrey Epstein. It's been making news everywhere. Trump took to social justice, calling the article false, malicious, defamatory, fake news, launched what he called a powerhouse lawsuit. Now, this is where it gets interesting. By suing, Trump has triggered what they call discovery, allowing Murdoch's team to demand communications, calendars, visitor logs, and even testimony under oath. Under oath even. In defamation cases, truth is a defense. So the Wall Street Journal team has a strong incentive to prove the story's accuracy. The Wall Street Journal and News Corp say they maintain full confidence in their reporting and plan to vigorously defend. This is where Trump's got it wrong, because Trump's been throwing out lawsuits like their, birthday cards, and the media has capitulated. We saw ABC News settle a ridiculous lawsuit against George Stephanopoulos about he mischaracterized the Donald Trump sexual assault verdict. There was some legal term that he didn't use, and I think he outrightly called it a sexual assault. Trump sued, and basically ABC capitulated. But the biggest one was what happened this week with Paramount Plus agreeing to pay, I think it was $16 million to Trump as part of a settlement over the ridiculous 60 Minutes lawsuit Trump brought against them, where basically an interview with Kamala Harris, a preview clip was shown in a morning TV show as part of a promotion, and it contained a different part of the answer than what was shown in the final report. He never would have won it. But of course, for those in the know, Paramount Global, which owns CBS, is trying to sell to Skydance Media at the moment. So this deal hasn't had what they call FCC approval. And so they've been trying to get that. And so they paid up the $16 million. ABC paid up the $20 million. But Rupert Murdoch doesn't need anything. So Rupert Murdoch has no reason to settle. And Rupert Murdoch, I have a feeling, really wouldn't want to settle because he is not the biggest fan of Donald Trump. It's an uneasy alliance between him and Trump. Trump is good for ratings on Fox News. But Rupert Murdoch, when he sees a chink in the armour, doesn't mind bringing someone down a peg or two. There's no doubt this Wall Street Journal got approval from him or Lachlan Murdoch. And they've let this go knowing it would probably lead to a lawsuit. But the biggest play here might be the future reporting the Wall Street Journal gets out of it. Because unless Trump folds, things are going to get very, very interesting. And he could find himself on the hook because this Jeffrey Epstein thing is not going away from him no matter how much he tries to deflect. And that is the chink I just spoke about when it comes to Rupert Murdoch. He's seen that chink because Trump has tried everything to deflect this story, calling it a Democrat hoax. Before, it was the Democrats that were trying to hide something. Now he's calling it a Democrat hoax and then blaming everybody else, Comey, Obama, Biden, all those people. And it's the MAGA base that want the details of Epstein. This has been something they've been hungry for. And while some of his sycophants are changing their tune, there's still a lot of unrest in MAGA land. Murdoch's seen that and he's pounced.
Here comes McKnight tonight.
Well, earlier tonight, we looked at Tasmania's stalled election and the Greens' push to bring back pill testing both at festivals and fixed sites, and you well know my opinion on that. Now, Victoria has announced a permanent pill testing site will open next month in Fitzroy, so I thought it would be a good idea to dig a little deeper on the issue and get some insights from the man who led Australia's first pill testing operation at the Groove in the Move Festival in Canberra in August 2018. Dr. David Caldecott, welcome to McKnight Tonight.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Let me ask you, does pill testing save lives?
It's more nuanced than that. I think both opponents and advocates would like to be able to say that it absolutely saves, say, 1,000 lives a year. We don't know how many lives it saves, but what we do know is that it reduces the number of poor decisions being made by young people, thereby making it less likely for them to overdose from drugs and for them to require hospitalization and admission to hospital. In that mix, it probably does, but precisely how many, even I can't tell you.
Yeah, I understand that, but anyone who gets a pill tested, and we've seen evidence of this where pills have been tested and they have been seen to be dangerous and people have thrown those away, right?
They not only throw them away, they also change. And perhaps the real money is where them changing behavior. So they develop an understanding that the market is in fact tainted, that they can't rely on what they've been told about the market. And so they're far less likely. Well, I'm not necessarily in my practice going to turn all the people who use drugs at music festivals into absolute Puritans who will never touch a pill or a shot of alcohol again. But what we can do is we can change what they do so that they don't mix their drugs, so that they use fewer drugs, and are far more likely to come home to their mummies and daddies than they otherwise might have been.
Look, I get politically, it's easy for conservative parties and politicians to war on drugs and all that kind of stuff. But if we have some anecdotal evidence that, you know, this is working, why do you think they will still take this line? Is it pure politics, or are they actually of a belief that a complete zero tolerance will save lives?
Look, I think there's a couple of reasons, old chap. I think there is obviously this cultural cognition and signaling to base that we believe in a war on drugs, despite the evidence that exists to show that it doesn't work at all. For example, the amount of money that is spent on sniffer dogs around Australia, which actually makes music festivals more dangerous, that could be repurposed.
Why is that?
For drug checking. Sorry, but because
Ha-
people who see sniffer dogs outside of a music festival panic and take all of their drugs at the same time.
Gotcha.
And this is quite a well-described phenomenon. But the amount of money that we spend on that, even just for one state or territory, we could fund the entirety of a pill testing program, which would actually diminish drug consumption across Australia. So, in fact, the Elvis has left the building. We know that it's more than just anecdotal evidence. There's now published evidence, and a lot of it's coming out of Australia to show that providing a drug checking or pill testing service changes young people's attitudes perhaps better than any other approach. Now, it's not, nobody's suggesting that it should be established outside a primary school or anything like that. This is for that group of people who are already committed to consuming drugs. And that's a particularly refractory group of young people to get a message through to. And pill testing seems to be the way to engage them.
Do we just have to be honest about how many Australians are consuming tons of illegal substances each year? I'm looking at the National Wastewater Drug Monitoring Program. So you would know about this, obviously, that they literally test our wastewater to see what's in it. And there's methamphetamine, there's cocaine, 2.1 tons per year of cocaine, MDAA, ecstasy, 1.5 tons. When will we accept that drugs are prevalent in our society? It's not just party boys, it's literally in all elements of society, isn't it?
Yep. No, it's surprising the number of people who use drugs in Australia. In years past, if drug consumption was an Olympic sport, Australia would have a podium finish globally. I would put it to you that, if the prevalent approach of prohibition isn't working, as it clearly isn't, then it's probably the time for harm minimization to have its go. And that's largely what we're advocating for, is to accept the fact that young people are indulging in this enormous act of civil disobedience and continuing to consume drugs. And as a doctor, it's not my job to get involved in the morality of that. It's my job to try to keep them alive, reduce the period of time for which they're using drugs, and reduce the quantity of drugs that they're consuming so that they can become productive members of society later on in their lives, and minimize their exposure to the potential hazards associated with drug consumption.
But your point of view does face an uphill battle. Yes, we have the pill testing facility going in at in Melbourne. But, I think about former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian, who famously brought in amnesty bins. Now, I'm going to assume these do not work. Is there any indication that even a couple of pills went in these bins, or am I mistaken?
No, look, I think you're absolutely spot on. Young people of this generation want to have a conversation. They have acquired whatever they intend to consume, sometimes at considerable cost to themselves, and they're not likely to throw that away just on a goodwill gesture. What we have seen is that people surrender their drugs once the nature of the drugs that they're holding is discussed with them. So they're very much about having a personal or concierge discussion about their drug consumption. Oftentimes, in a pill testing environment, the first real conversation with a healthcare professional that they have ever had in their lives. So simply putting up bins, that doesn't engage this generation. And this is part of the wider problem, is that the solutions that are being proposed by various governments around Australia are being designed by people who are not representative of the generation that we're trying to engage with. And I would probably take a little bit of issue with you with the idea that we're not getting traction, because obviously New South Wales is doing their own thing. Victoria is pushing on. The ACT is well established. So I think, these things take a good bit of time to bed down and to sort out. But I suspect the genie of pill testing is out of the bottle, and we're now in a far better position to have a rational dialogue with young people than something that approaches religiosity as far as drug consumption is concerned.
Can I just ask you what finally, you keep referring to it being a young people issue. I feel anecdotally I've seen a lot of drug use of all ages across the suburbs. Is that just maybe the people I know, or is that
No, I think your position is quite representative. I mean, you and I are probably of a similar age, dare I say it. I'm demonstrating it far more effectively. But you and I both went to festivals in our youth, and the same people who were going to festivals and using drugs back in our day are probably, some of them are still probably doing it. So we do see overdoses across the country of people in their 50s and 60s. Which is a very interesting medical problem, obviously, because the human body changes after you kick on from 50, and we're not really designed very well to consume these experience-altering substances. So it's a completely new phenomenon that we as doctors are having to deal with. So you're absolutely right. There is definitely a cohort of people who are not so young who use drugs. And what we would prefer is to ensure that we can divert young people from behavior that in later life might bring them some strife.
Well, it's good advice and it's fascinating. And good luck with future pill testing. Dr. David Caldicott, thanks for joining us on McKnight Tonight.
My pleasure.
What an amazing man, right? Yeah, I think he's fantastic. Hope we'll get him back on the show, I'm sure. Hey, let's take a look at some feedback to wrap this show up. Jeanette says, I have Allen steaks and they are apricot ones. Need them? Yes, Jeanette, I do. Actually, we should have a big drive to get me the orange original steaks because I hate the new ones. Over the page we go. Vicky says, did you say something to the tuna man? No, Vicky, I didn't, because my whole family were looking at me with the look of, don't you dare, don't you dare, don't you dare. So I held my, I was going to say I held my breath. I did hold my breath. That's right, Amanda. But I bit my tongue. That's what I was trying to say. Radio Notes podcast with that lovely donation when they buy me a coffee today. Or is this a Reuben K Mark II case? Now, what he is referring to is the comedian who I just showed you. And Reuben K was on the project and he did that joke about Jesus Christ. I love any man who can rise from the dead after being nailed to a cross for 3 days, or be nailed for 3 days. I can't remember the exact joke. I would have defended that. Comedians, I get worried when we keep trying to cancel comedians and when we say what is and isn't acceptable. No, the comedian tries it, and that audience laughed at her joke. Now, then we put it on social media and we put it out there, and people who aren't going to go and see her in doing her thing, and I've got to tell you, I will, and Amanda and I were talking about it, it's made us become interested in her. And, I'm going to be honest, I've forgotten the name, and I'm trying to find it. Conchetta Caristo, that's right. And I have seen her on Charlie Pickering's show, The Weekly. I think she's fantastic. Jeanette says I can send them. Thank you, Jeanette. Oh, God, I love you. All right, Own Your Own Crazy says the ick is in the congrats on the book deal. Yeah, but again, just trying to be funny. And you don't have to like it. That's all right. You don't have to like all comedy. Louis says there needs to be more subs. This content is good. Thank you, Louis. More subscriptions. As someone said, they said like, share, and subscribe, which is good. Do that. Like, share, and subscribe McKnight Tonight because we love it. Own Your Own Crazy says, I'm on Team Murdoch. I know I never thought I'd see the day either. Trump will lose before a judge, but will win in the court of public opinion. No, that's where I disagree. Because truth is a defense. And so if Murdoch does the discovery and can find documents that... Look, I would argue... I'd be very surprised if Trump didn't do this card, which means that Rupert Murdoch has truth on his side. And I also think Trump is losing in the court of public opinion. He's called his own supporters idiots, and he doesn't want their support because they keep wanting to know about Epstein and the Epstein files. I think this has got a long way to go. It's going to be fascinating, but it won't get to court. Trump will fold. It'll be the one court case he folds on. All right, that brings us to the end of McKnight Tonight. Tomorrow it's Media McKnight. And don't forget, if you are a member of McKnight Tonight on the YouTube page at youtube.com/Media McKnight Tonight, you will get an early feed of that episode. So if it's finished at 6, 7, 8, whatever time it's finished, you will get the upload before it goes live for everyone else at 9 o'clock. All right. And then we're back live on Wednesday for another edition of McKnight Tonight. Hot topics, interviews, and so much more. I am Rob McKnight. Thank you for your company. It's been a long one. We all want to go to bed after a big day partying. Happy birthday, Eloise. Good night from McKnight.
Tonight, McKnight tonight, McKnight tonight. It's good.